boy shuffled through the streets, his thin jacket offering little protection against the sharp winter wind. His shoes had holes in them, and each step made his toes ache. His stomach growled loudly, reminding him that he had not eaten since the day before. He clutched an old backpack close to his chest, feeling the weight of its few belongings, mostly scraps of paper filled with music notes and a small notebook where he had written down songs he had composed in secret. Music had always been his escape. It was the only thing that made the cold nights and empty stomachs bearable. He wandered past cafes and busy shops, hoping for a miracle, but most people hurried past without noticing him. The boy's eyes were drawn to a familiar sight, a large hotel with shiny glass doors and a grand entrance. Inside, he knew there was a piano, a beautiful, polished piano that probably never saw a hand like his playing it. He stopped for a moment, taking in the warmth that seemed to flow from the inside of the building. He had played on many pianos in his life, mostly abandoned ones, or sometimes an old keyboard that someone had discarded. But he had dreamed of playing on a piano like that, one that responded perfectly to every touch, every note he imagined. With a deep breath, he stepped closer. He peeked through the glass doors, watching people in suits and dresses walking past him. He knew he did not belong there. He felt invisible, small, and completely out of place. His hands itched to touch the piano, to let the music pour out and fill the space around him. The idea came to him, a mixture of hope and desperation. Maybe, just maybe, he could play in exchange for some food. He hesitated, thinking it was a ridiculous idea, but hunger made him brave. He pushed the door open slowly, and the warmth hit him like a wave. The smell of coffee and pastries filled the air. He kept his head down, hoping no one would notice him. At the end of the lobby, there it was, a grand piano polished and shining under the lights. He walked toward it slowly, trying to make his hands steady. His fingers itched to touch the keys. He sat down on the bench and looked around nervously. Just as he was about to press the first note, a man's voice broke the quiet of the lobby. The man was tall, dressed in a sharp suit that looked expensive, and carried an air of authority. He had been watching the boy with amusement. "Can I perform for food?" the boy asked softly, his voice barely audible over the background chatter. The man laughed, a sharp, mocking laugh that made the boy shrink back slightly. "You think playing a piano will get you a meal here?" the man said, still chuckling. The boy did not answer. He had heard laughter like this before. People had always laughed at him because of his appearance, his thin frame or his worn-out clothes. But this time, something inside him pushed him forward. He placed his hands on the keys and pressed one gently. The note rang out, pure and clear, and something in the lobby seemed to pause. He closed his eyes and let the music take over, his fingers moving with a natural grace, flowing as if the piano and he were one. At first, the notes were soft, tentative, but then they grew bolder. He played a melody that was both sad and beautiful, a story of nights spent cold and hungry, of hope that refused to die. People in the lobby began to stop and listen. Some looked around, confused, wondering where the music was coming from. Others smiled, touched by the emotion in the sound. The man in the suit, the CEO, stopped laughing. He crossed his arms and watched, his expression shifting from amusement to curiosity. The boy's music told a story without words. Each note seemed to float in the air, reaching the hearts of everyone who heard it. He had no audience in mind, no expectation. He just played because he had to, because music was the only thing that made him feel alive. His fingers danced across the keys, and for a moment, the world outside, the cold, the hunger, the loneliness, did not exist. There was only the music, and the boy pouring his soul into it. The CEO leaned against the wall, surprised at the skill and emotion of the boy. He had seen many talented musicians, but something about this child, ragged and worn, yet playing with such depth and precision, caught him off guard. He had not expected to be impressed by a homeless boy, but he could not deny the talent before him. People started to gather slowly, some sitting on benches, some standing quietly, letting the music wash over them. The boy did not notice the crowd. He was lost in his own world. He did not see the CEO take out his phone to record a few seconds. Fascinated. He did not see the way the notes seemed to linger in the room, creating a moment of magic in a place that had never seen such beauty before. When the song ended, the boy opened his eyes and looked around. There was silence for a moment, then soft applause. The boy's heart skipped. He had not expected this. No one had ever stopped to listen before. The CEO stepped forward, clapping slowly, still trying to mask his surprise. You can play, he said, more as a statement than a question. The boy nodded quietly, unsure of what to say. The CEO's amusement had vanished. There was a new curiosity in his eyes. He crouched slightly to be at eye level with the boy. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked. The boy shrugged. "I just taught myself," he said softly. He was used to people dismissing his answers. He did not know that the CEO in that moment was genuinely interested. The boy looked down at his hands, feeling the lingering vibration of the last notes. He did not want to ask for food again. The music had said what he could not. It had told his story, shown his talent, and reached hearts without words. He had given a piece of himself, and it felt strange and wonderful at the same time. The CEO studied him for a moment longer, then straightened up. He gestured toward the lobby and the warm pastries on the counter. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you something to eat." The boy blinked, surprised. He had not expected kindness after laughter, but hunger and hope made him step forward. As he walked toward the food, he felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement. This was only the beginning, he thought. Even as he ate quietly, the boy felt the music still inside him, pulsing, waiting for the next time he could pour it out. He glanced at the piano across the room, and a small smile crept across his face. No matter where life took him, music would always be there, and maybe, just maybe, the world was ready to listen. After that first performance, the boy returned to the streets, but something had changed. People who had seen him play whispered about him on the corners and in the cafes. A few even tried to offer him small jobs or spare change, but he politely refused. He did not want charity. He wanted music. The warm taste of food he had eaten earlier stayed in his mouth, not just for the nourishment but for the feeling of being seen, of being recognized for what he could do, not just for the clothes he wore or the empty bag he carried. Every day he would visit the hotel lobby, hoping the piano would be waiting. Sometimes it was not. He began noticing patterns in how people reacted to him. Children would linger, wide-eyed, as if they were discovering a secret world. Adults would stop for a moment, some with smiles, some with skeptical frowns. But in every reaction, he saw something he had never seen before: genuine attention. He started playing not for food, not for money, but for the moment itself, for the way music could touch people even if only for a few minutes. The CEO, intrigued by the boy's talent, began paying attention more closely. He was a man used to control, used to seeing results quickly. He had seen thousands of employees, attended countless performances, and yet something about this boy unsettled him. He could not place it at first. The boy was small, frail, and clearly unpolished in the ways of the world. But there was something in the way his fingers moved over the keys, something that seemed almost untamed yet perfect. It was raw talent, raw emotion, and it demanded respect. One day, the CEO decided to approach him directly. He waited until the boy had finished a piece, and the applause of a small gathering had faded. "You have an unusual gift," he said, his voice calmer than before. The boy looked up, cautious but curious. "I have seen many people play, but it is different with you. How long have you been playing?" The boy shrugged, a little embarrassed. "Since I was very small. I taught myself." The CEO raised an eyebrow. "Alone?" The boy nodded, fingers still itching to touch the keys. "No teacher. Just music." The CEO studied him for a moment, then said, "I want you to come to a proper music studio. I want to see what else you can do." The boy's eyes widened. He had never been invited into a place like that before. He hesitated. His life had been filled with adults making promises they never kept. He had learned to protect himself, to stay cautious. But there was something in the CEO's tone, a mixture of challenge and genuine interest, that made him trust for the first time in a long while. He nodded slowly. The next day, the boy arrived at a private music studio. It smelled of polished wood and new instruments. The walls were lined with records and photographs of famous musicians. He walked carefully, almost afraid he might break something with a single wrong step. The CEO watched him closely, curious about how this small boy would handle such a formal environment. The boy approached a grand piano, larger and even more beautiful than the one in the hotel lobby. His fingers hovered above the keys, trembling slightly. He took a deep breath and pressed down. Immediately, the sound filled the room. The boy played a piece that was more complex than anything he had played in public before. His fingers moved with precision, but there was still that raw emotion, that feeling of someone speaking without words. The CEO listened in silence, a mixture of astonishment and admiration on his face. He had seen talented musicians before, but he had never seen someone so young, so untrained in formal ways, yet with such control and feeling. As the boy finished, he looked up, expecting criticism, expecting laughter even. But there was none. The CEO clapped slowly, deliberately. "You have incredible talent," he said. "But raw talent is not enough. You need guidance, structure, and opportunities. I can provide that. Will you accept it?" The boy swallowed hard. He had never been offered anything like this. He had never believed anyone would invest in him, not just as a curiosity, but as a person with potential. He nodded, still quiet but with a spark of excitement in his eyes. Over the next few weeks, the boy began a routine that was completely new to him. He learned about musical theory, practiced scales and exercises he had never tried before, and explored compositions from famous musicians he had only read about in old, worn books. Sometimes it was frustrating. His fingers hurt, and his mind felt overwhelmed. But every time he returned to the piano to play his own compositions, everything felt right again. Music was no longer just an escape. It was becoming a tool to express everything he felt and everything he dreamed of. The CEO observed all of this with fascination. He began to understand that the boy's genius was not just in skill but in the way he connected emotionally to the music. The boy was learning quickly, absorbing lessons and applying them naturally. There was also a subtle humility about him, an awareness of the world that came from hardship. The CEO found himself reflecting on his own life, his own privileges, and realizing that he had overlooked simple truths about talent, dedication, and human connection. Word began to spread quietly among a few music circles that there was a young prodigy in town, playing in private studios with an intensity that was rare even among trained professionals. Invitations to small performances came, and the boy was nervous at first. He had never imagined performing in front of an audience outside the hotel lobby. But the first time he played in a small recital hall, he felt something he had never felt before: confidence. The applause that followed was not just polite, it was recognition. People were moved by his music, by the stories it told, by the emotions it carried. Even in this new environment, he never forgot the streets. He remembered the nights of hunger, the cold wind, the sense of invisibility. That memory drove him to play not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been ignored or underestimated. Every note he played carried a piece of his history, a reflection of every hardship he had endured. And slowly, the CEO began to see the impact not just on the audience but on the boy himself. The music was healing him, shaping him, giving him a future he had never dared to imagine. One afternoon, the boy returned to the hotel lobby, his pockets heavier now from small tips and gifts of appreciation from his first performances. He played for a small crowd, some familiar faces and some new. The CEO watched from a distance, satisfied with the progress but also humbled. He realized that talent like this could not be forced, could not be manufactured. It came from life experience, from heartache and hope intertwined. And the boy, with all his vulnerabilities and brilliance, embodied that truth. As the music floated through the lobby, the boy felt a sense of completeness he had never known. He was no longer just a boy asking for food. He was an artist, a musician, and a person whose presence demanded attention and respect. He knew the road ahead would not be easy, but he had tasted possibility, and that was enough to keep him moving forward. The CEO approached him after the performance, not with laughter, but with an offer. "There is a world waiting for your music," he said. "If you are ready, I can help you reach it." The boy nodded, a quiet determination in his eyes. He was ready to step into a future shaped by his talent, guided by newfound opportunity, and fueled by the music that had always been his lifeline. The boy had started to get used to his new routine. Each day he would go to the music studio, practice, learn, and slowly start understanding the world of professional music. But despite the comfort of warm rooms and proper instruments, he still carried the weight of his old life. The streets, the hunger, the nights spent shivering, were all a part of him, and he felt they would never leave. His music was his way of holding on to both the past and the future, a bridge between the life he had and the life he wanted. The CEO had become more than just a curious observer. He had decided to take a personal interest in the boy's development. Some days, he would sit in the studio, arms crossed, watching the boy's hands move across the keys. He asked questions about technique, about emotion, and sometimes about the boy's inspirations. He was strict, precise, and expected results, but he also began to see the value in the boy's natural instincts. Unlike other students who followed instructions mechanically, this boy had a unique way of interpreting music. Every piece he played seemed to carry a story. One afternoon, after an intense practice session, the CEO spoke seriously. "There is an opportunity for you to perform at a small event next week," he said. "It will be in front of people who appreciate music, but it is still a real audience. Are you ready for that?" The boy hesitated. He had performed in the hotel lobby, he had performed in a small recital hall, but this was different. He would have to face people who knew music, people who could judge harshly. The thought was frightening. He nodded slowly, trying to mask his fear, but inside, his heart was racing. The days leading to the event were filled with preparation. The boy practiced longer hours than ever before, working on every note, every transition, every emotion he wanted to convey. Sometimes he made mistakes and would sit in silence, frustrated, wondering if he was truly ready. But the CEO never let him give up. "Mistakes are part of learning," he would say. "What matters is how you continue after them." These words stayed with the boy. He began to see mistakes not as failure, but as a chance to grow, a way to make his music even better. The night before the performance, the boy sat alone at the piano in the studio. The room was quiet except for the soft tapping of his fingers on the keys. He closed his eyes and let the music flow freely, without thinking about perfection or audience. He played from his heart, pouring all his fears, hopes, and memories into the sound. For the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. He understood that the performance was not just about impressing others. It was about sharing a part of himself with the world. The day of the event arrived, and the boy felt a mix of nerves and excitement. He dressed carefully, in clothes that were still simple but clean and neat. He looked at his reflection and took a deep breath. The CEO met him at the entrance of the hall. "Remember," he said, "this is not about them. This is about you and your music. Let it speak for you." The boy nodded, trying to absorb the words. As he walked onto the stage, he saw the audience. People were seated quietly, waiting for the performance to begin. Some were seasoned musicians, some were enthusiasts, and some were simply curious. The lights were bright, and for a moment, the boy felt the old fear return. He remembered the streets, the cold nights, the laughter of those who had dismissed him. But then he looked at the piano in front of him, remembered the sound of the first note he had ever played in the lobby, and felt a spark of confidence. He sat down and let his fingers find the keys. The first notes were soft, hesitant, but as he continued, the music grew stronger, more confident. The audience leaned in, captivated by the unexpected skill and emotion coming from such a young performer. Every note told a story, the nights of hunger, the struggle to survive, the small victories that had kept him going. The boy played as if his life depended on it, and in a way it did. The audience could feel the intensity, and some were moved to tears. The CEO watched from the side, silently proud. He had not anticipated the depth of the boy's talent, nor the power of his presence. It was not just skill that set him apart. It was the emotion, the authenticity, the way he connected to everyone who listened. When the performance ended, there was a moment of stunned silence, then applause that grew louder and louder. The boy stood, bowing slightly, feeling a mixture of relief and exhilaration. He had done it. He had faced real judgment and had not only survived but shined. After the performance, several people approached him. They asked questions about his background, about his music, about how he had developed such a talent. The boy answered quietly, still processing the whirlwind of the evening. He realized that people were interested in him, not because he was a spectacle, but because he had something valuable to offer. For the first time, he felt that he belonged somewhere, that his talent had a place in the world. The CEO approached him, a rare smile on his face. "You were remarkable tonight," he said. "I have seen many talented people, but you are different. Your music is alive in a way that few can achieve. This is only the beginning." The boy felt a surge of pride but also a quiet humility. He knew that he still had much to learn, that there were challenges ahead. But for the first time, he felt that those challenges were not insurmountable. He had found a path, and he had someone willing to guide him along it. Over the next few weeks, the boy continued to practice, perform, and learn. Each performance was a chance to grow, each lesson a step toward mastery. He also began to connect more with the CEO, who started sharing stories of his own life, of mistakes and successes, of the pressures of business and leadership. The boy listened, absorbing wisdom, learning not only about music but about life. There was mutual respect between them, a bond formed through shared experiences and understanding. The boy never forgot the streets, and he never forgot the laughter he had once faced. He played not just for himself, but for everyone who had been ignored, underestimated, or dismissed. Music had become a voice for the voiceless, a way to turn pain into something beautiful. Each performance carried the weight of his past and the hope of his future, touching everyone who listened. And the CEO, who had once laughed at him, now stood quietly in the background, recognizing that he had been witness to something extraordinary from the very beginning. Through all this, the boy began to understand the true power of music. It was not about fame, money, or recognition alone. It was about connection, expression, and transformation. He had transformed himself, his circumstances, and in a small way, the lives of those who heard him play. And as he sat at the piano each day, practicing, learning, and creating, he felt a quiet determination. He would continue to grow, continue to play, and continue to share his gift, knowing that talent combined with courage could change the course of a life, and perhaps even the world around him. The boy had grown more confident with every performance, every lesson, and every interaction in the studio. Yet he knew he was far from finished. He had glimpses of what life could be like beyond the streets, but he still had much to learn about discipline, structure, and handling the expectations of the world around him. The CEO saw this as well and decided it was time for a bigger step, one that would challenge him in ways he had never experienced before. One morning, the CEO arrived at the studio with a serious look on his face. "There is a larger event coming up," he said. "A gathering of musicians and patrons who influence the music world. If you want to go further, you need to perform there." The boy listened carefully. He had performed for small audiences, but this was different. The stakes were higher, and the scrutiny would be more intense. Fear tried to creep in, but he pushed it aside. He nodded, ready to accept the challenge. Preparation began immediately. The CEO guided him through new exercises, focusing on both technical mastery and emotional depth. He encouraged the boy to explore different genres and styles, to expand his understanding of music beyond what he had known. Each day was a mixture of excitement and exhaustion. Some mornings, the boy felt his fingers ache from hours of practice, his mind overwhelmed by new concepts. Yet each evening, he returned to the piano to play his own compositions, letting his soul speak freely. The boy also started learning about presentation. He learned how to sit, how to approach the piano, how to control his breathing, and how to communicate with an audience through gestures and expressions. The CEO explained that music was not only about the notes but also about the experience it created for the listeners. The boy listened and practiced diligently, slowly absorbing lessons that were once foreign to him. As the day of the event approached, the boy's nerves became more pronounced. He had learned that talent alone could only take him so far. Now he needed confidence and poise. Late one night, he sat alone at the piano, replaying his performance in his mind. He imagined the audience, the lights, the judges, and every detail. He pressed down on the keys, letting his emotions pour into the music, feeling every note, every rhythm, every pause. By the end, he felt a quiet calm settle over him, knowing he had prepared as best as he could. When the day arrived, the venue was vast and elegant, filled with people dressed in fine clothing, each one expecting a certain level of skill and performance. The boy walked in with the CEO, feeling the weight of eyes upon him. He noticed the subtle judgments in glances, the curious whispers. But he focused on the piano, reminding himself that this was his moment to communicate through music, not words. He approached the stage, heart pounding, and took his seat. The performance began. The first notes were deliberate, strong, yet gentle. The boy let himself become fully absorbed in the music, letting it flow naturally while conveying every emotion he had experienced. The audience was captivated, some leaning forward in their seats, others closing their eyes to fully immerse themselves in the sound. Each piece he played was a story of struggle, hope, perseverance, and triumph. As he continued, the boy began to notice subtle reactions from the audience. There were smiles of recognition, nods of appreciation, and even tears from some who felt deeply moved. For the first time, he felt the true power of his gift, the ability to touch people's hearts, to connect them to something real, something human. The applause at the end was thunderous, not just polite acknowledgement, but genuine admiration. The boy bowed, feeling a mix of relief, pride, and quiet humility. He had stepped into a world he had never imagined, and he had done so with honesty and talent. After the performance, several patrons approached him, eager to talk, to learn about the young prodigy. They asked about his background, his inspirations, and his future plans. The boy answered carefully, aware that people were now taking him seriously, that he was no longer just the homeless boy playing for food. The CEO observed quietly, noting how far the boy had come, and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He realized that he had not only helped the boy grow but had also learned lessons himself about patience, understanding, and the value of raw talent. The experience of the event marked a turning point. The boy began receiving more invitations to perform, opportunities to collaborate with other musicians, and offers to study with experienced teachers. He embraced each opportunity, knowing that every new experience would expand his skill, understanding, and confidence. Yet, he remained grounded, remembering where he had come from, the streets, the hunger, and the uncertainty that had once defined his life. He understood that humility and gratitude were just as important as talent and practice. Back in the studio, he continued to practice, now with a renewed sense of purpose. He experimented with new compositions, blending the lessons he had learned with the emotions he had felt in his past. His music grew richer, more complex, yet retained the authenticity that had captivated audiences from the very beginning. The CEO encouraged him to explore these personal creations, reminding him that originality and self-expression were what made a musician truly remarkable. As days turned into weeks, the boy became more comfortable in the world he was entering. He still had moments of doubt and fear, but he had learned to channel those emotions into his music. Each performance became not only a display of skill, but also a conversation with the audience, a way to share a part of himself that words could never capture. The boy began to realize that his past struggles, his hardships, and even the moments of despair were not obstacles, but essential elements that shaped his music and his identity. The CEO, who had once laughed at the boy's request to play for food, now watched with admiration and respect. He had come to understand that talent and determination could not be measured by appearance or circumstances. The boy had shown that perseverance, passion and authenticity were the true markers of greatness. Their relationship had grown into one of mutual respect, mentorship, and understanding. The CEO guided, advised, and challenged the boy, while the boy inspired and reminded him of the power of human potential. One evening, after a long day of practice and preparation for another event, the boy sat quietly at the piano. He reflected on how much his life had changed in just a few months. He remembered the cold streets, the hunger, the loneliness, and the laughter of those who had underestimated him. He thought about the warmth of the studio, the encouragement of the CEO, and the faces of those who had been moved by his music. He realized that music had not only transformed his life, but had also given him a voice, a way to express everything he had felt and everything he hoped to achieve. The boy placed his hands on the keys, playing a piece he had composed himself. Each note carried a memory, a feeling, a lesson learned. The sound filled the studio, echoing through the walls, as if speaking to the past, the present, and the future simultaneously. He played not for recognition or approval, but for the pure joy of creating, for the power of music to heal, connect, and transform. In that moment, he felt complete, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and confident that his journey had only just begun. The boy had reached a point where he no longer questioned his place in the world. He had transformed from the homeless child, who had timidly asked for food in exchange for music, into a confident young musician whose talent demanded attention. But with each step forward came new challenges, and the boy understood that true mastery was not just about skill. It was about resilience, emotion, and connection. The opportunity came in the form of a prestigious concert, one that would bring together some of the finest musicians and patrons of music in the region. Invitations were sent to people who could influence careers, open doors, and provide lasting opportunities. The CEO, who had guided the boy since their first encounter, sat with him in the backstage room. "This is your chance to show the world who you really are," he said. "Not just as a musician, but as someone with a story and a voice." The boy nodded, his nerves evident but tempered by months of preparation and experience. He had practiced tirelessly, refining every piece he intended to play, and rehearsing the emotions he wanted to convey. The backstage room was quiet, the murmur of voices from the hall beyond serving as a distant reminder of the audience waiting for him. He closed his eyes, recalling the first time he had sat at a piano in a hotel lobby, the laughter of the CEO, the cold streets, and the warmth of recognition he had finally found. Each memory fueled his determination. When his turn came, he walked onto the stage, feeling the weight of expectation but also a sense of readiness. The lights were bright, the audience vast and attentive. He approached the grand piano, polished and majestic, and took his seat. He placed his fingers on the keys and paused, letting the silence settle before starting. Then he began to play. From the first note, it was clear that this was not just a performance, it was a story. The boy poured his life, his struggles, and his victories into the music. Every note carried emotion. The cold nights of hunger, the hope that had driven him forward, the lessons learned in the studio, and the moments of connection with people who had believed in him. The audience listened in awe, drawn in by the depth and authenticity of his playing. As the performance continued, the boy felt a sense of liberation. He was no longer playing to prove himself. He was playing to express, to share, and to inspire. His fingers moved with precision, yet every motion was alive with feeling. The audience was captivated, some leaning forward in their seats, others closing their eyes to fully experience the music. The boy's story was unfolding through sound, and it was being heard, understood, and appreciated. The CEO watched silently from the side, pride evident in his expression. He remembered the first time the boy had asked, almost hesitantly, if he could perform for food. The journey from that moment to this grand stage had been remarkable. The boy had not only developed incredible technical skill, but had also learned the power of resilience, humility, and emotional honesty. The CEO knew that this performance would be remembered, not just for its technical brilliance, but for the raw humanity it conveyed. When the final notes echoed through the hall, There was a moment of silence, as if the world itself paused to acknowledge what had just happened. Then, the applause began, slow at first, then growing into a powerful, sustained ovation. People were on their feet, cheering and clapping with genuine admiration. The boy stood, bowing deeply, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and profound gratitude. He had done it. He had faced the highest level of scrutiny and had not only survived but shined. After the concert, many approached him with admiration and curiosity. Musicians, teachers, and patrons asked about his background, his compositions, and his journey. The boy answered modestly, speaking quietly but with sincerity. He shared the story of his beginnings on the streets, of the music that had kept him alive, and of the guidance he had received from someone who had once laughed at him. His words resonated as much as his music, and people were moved not only by his talent, but by his story of perseverance and courage. The CEO stood nearby, observing how far the boy had come. He had started as a skeptic, someone amused by a ragged child's request. Now he felt a deep respect and pride. The boy's journey had taught him valuable lessons about potential, about the human spirit, and about the impact that recognition and opportunity could have on someone with talent and determination. The CEO approached the boy, offering a smile and a quiet word of encouragement. "This is just the beginning," he said. "The world is listening now." In the days that followed, the boy's life changed significantly. Invitations to perform in larger venues, collaborations with renowned musicians, and opportunities for formal training began to arrive. He embraced each new challenge with determination and humility. Despite the whirlwind of attention, he remained grounded, never forgetting the streets, the hunger, and the moments of struggle that had shaped him. Those experiences were woven into his music, giving it depth, authenticity, and soul. The boy also began composing more, creating pieces that reflected his journey and the lessons he had learned. He explored new styles, blending classical techniques with the emotional intensity of his personal experiences. His music became a voice for the voiceless, a testament to perseverance, and an inspiration for anyone facing adversity. Each performance was not just an exhibition of skill but a story, a message, and a connection between the boy and his audience. As his reputation grew, so did his confidence. He learned to handle the pressures of public attention, the expectations of mentors, and the challenges of self-doubt. Yet, he never allowed these pressures to overshadow the joy of playing, the fundamental reason he had started. The love of music and the desire to express himself. He understood that talent alone was not enough. It was the heart, the authenticity, and the persistence that truly defined him. The CEO, who had once doubted the boy and laughed at his request, became a steadfast supporter and mentor. Their relationship evolved into one of mutual respect, collaboration, and shared understanding. The CEO guided him through opportunities, offered advice, and helped him navigate the complexities of the music world. In return, the boy reminded the CEO of the power of raw talent, emotional honesty, and the resilience of the human spirit. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, the boy walked home under the quiet glow of streetlights. He reflected on how far he had come, from the child asking for food in exchange for music to a recognized pianist whose talent was celebrated. Yet he felt no arrogance or entitlement. Instead, he felt gratitude, humility, and a deep connection to the journey that had brought him here. He knew that his music would continue to grow, that his story was still unfolding, and that the world was only beginning to hear what he had to share. He returned to the piano each day, practicing, composing, and exploring new ideas. His music was no longer just an escape or a means to survive. It was a bridge to the future, a way to touch lives, and a testament to the human capacity to overcome, create, and inspire. And as he played, he remembered the streets, the hunger, the cold nights, and the laughter of the man who had once dismissed him. Those memories were no longer sources of shame or fear, but fuel for his artistry and determination. In the end, the boy had achieved more than recognition. He had discovered himself, his voice, and the power of music to transform life. He had turned hardship into strength, laughter into motivation, and passion into accomplishment. And through it all, he had remained true to himself, proving that talent, resilience, and heart could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. His journey, from the streets to the stage, was complete, not as an end, but as a new beginning, full of promise, possibility, and the music that would continue to define his life.